Daily trading recap. Let's get after it today. Just another stupidity day. I mean, this is trading. This is why I do these daily recaps, just to journal these experiences and to reflect on them in the future, looking back in the past and just having an understanding and an expressive way to now go about with a positive attitude for the days ahead and where we go from here. So we'll get into the breakdown of it in just a little bit here. I want to go over dollar volume quick just for reference for me. An hour, 26 minutes after the close now with daylight savings. That was a fun wake up today. NASDAQ $248 billion volume, NYSE $365 billion volume, OTC's $2.6 billion volume on the day. Only traded, did my futures trading, and then also only traded MULN for small cap actual equity plays today. Was also looking at AGRI, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So going again after that, looking for that first minute for all the data collecting and bat testing that I'm doing, and still want to do some more to even further just involve myself in it. I do think there is some opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity within it, but it is just that refinement of understanding, even through my brain has just been so attuned to looking for, hey, where is opportunity? Where is hit rate? And there's definitely been huge amounts of hit rate opportunity based within 1 minute candles of SPY in the SP 500, or even on a full day spectrum through the ES, or even market hours on SPY itself. But then that factor is, okay, on those loser days, it's awesome that you have an incredible hit rate, but on the loser days, what happens? And that has just been the big hiccup that I have not really been putting in full focus. And I think in my retrospect and what I should have learned, the stupid tax from other people making that same mistake, was I should have prioritized the losing days. And that even though it looks very, very tiny, I could say, even I'm making 99 winners out of 100. That one day is not going to do anything. But sure enough, that one day can wreak absolute havoc more than anything. Today was certainly not one of those. It was just my own stupidity of how I was trading it. But I think indefinitely going forward, I certainly need to be pushing more towards prioritizing what is the loss first. I need to become a better loser with these automated strategies, or what I'm trying to do with this little back-tested emotionless trades on the SP 500 versus just kind of oohing and gawing over, oh, it's an awesome hit rate. It's just so beautiful, even though it's tiny, small. I can nail and bail every single day. On those loser days, how does that end up bouncing out? So that is one key takeaway going forward. Not necessarily based off of today, but just in my back testing going forward. Definitely want to keep an eye on that more. I also wrote in my journal here to come today before I get into the actual trades themselves of the I reflected upon and remembered how I used to play video games when I was even younger. Of course, I'm 22 years old, but back when my day, but I can even just remember growing up, and that I'm going to relate it to a TED Talk that Mark Rober did on Super Mario, kind of in the same realm. But when I played video games, whatever video game it was, fighting game, Call of Duty, or even like the My Sims Sky Heroes games, or My Sims Agents was one of my favorite games. But playing those games, even any video game, Borderlands comes to mind, but along that realm, it would take I needed a full day set away in order to be able to sit in front of that TV, turn on the console, and play that game. I needed a full clarity of no homework, no other sports going on, no other friends. And I needed to dedicate serious time to having that emotional, mental preparation in order to play that game. Playing games was totally, totally different for me than I could see it was for a lot of other kids. And it was just I had to hype myself up and psych everything that I was doing to get ready, to get go, and make it perfection. Because even though video games are just fake, and it was like, even if you died, you come back to life and you can restart the game and like do all these things, whatever. I took it with such a seriousness and such like a stain on my soul that if I ever died, or if I ever didn't get the A+ grade on the rating line on each level, apply it to whatever game, it was just so intense, draining on me mentally in order for me to play a game. So that's why I really never got hooked on video games, and it was because it was just such a toll taker. Like, I enjoyed them, like, oh, these games are awesome, the graphics, how you play it, I enjoyed that factor in retrospect, but in all reality of that situation, it was not a net positive. So then I come looking back today, I reflect on that today, and try to see it as almost if I'm doing the same thing with my trading, in that it's now I'm looking at this as my profession, and this needs to be where I'm putting all of my time and energy and resources. And then in the same light example of how I got into that little stuck in groove, and I know how Chris did the same thing of with those only being allowed to do those 3-day trades with the minimal cash we have in that margin account, of trying to put all of our eggs in one basket and putting all of this undue pressure on the one instance and scenario, and making this game way more serious than it needs to be. Not that it shouldn't be taken seriously, obviously, after the P&L loss that I took today, but of just and then now I want to go into the great TED Talk from Mark Rober, I think it is correct, and Super Mario, I think, is the analogy he gave with it, of when playing Super Mario, if you die in that game, that death should then prompt you. The normal reaction is, once you die in that Super Mario, you're thinking, oh, shoot, okay, I died, but now I know what to do. I failed, and now I'm even more excited to immediately get right back into the game and then advance myself beyond that point because I've failed it, but I learned from what my mistake was, and now I'm going forward and overcoming that. Versus like the loss I was taking today, of just the defeat and overwhelmingness that it can feel like sometimes, of another loss stacking up on me, like of just from where I'm even at right now, like just it's a straw that's breaking the camel's back. But at the end of the day, it truly does feel like, okay, I mean, we're running out of mistakes to make at this point. I know there's going to be a millennia more that I'm going to make throughout the rest of my trading career, but it's certainly not the end. And with each failure, with each loss, with each stupidity, with sometimes the stupid things that I do that still end up making me a profit. I think I took an MES trade long, and I was actually trying to go short, and I still ended up profiting because it went the wrong way that I was thinking. Lucked out on that. But like that type of stupidity, how that ends up benefiting me in the end. But in all regards, that stupidity of how it progresses me better and launches me to get back in sooner. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's about how many times you get back up. So very long-winded and just introspective introduction with that one. I'll go into my specific trades now with what I was doing, looking for putting in more work on that automated trading side with this future Ninja Trader opportunity. But the formula, the strategy that I had today failed to execute what I wanted to do today through all the back testing that I was doing, and just how finicky that system is, and trying to figure that out with how to set up the settings on it. It failed to recognize what I wanted to do out of the gate from that morning session. So sitting through that, trying to watch and see if it would eventually get filled, and then trying to make that up, made up like 1 point or like half a tick. I made up 1 tick with 1 contract because I misplaced, and I was initially trying to do 2 contracts, and then trying to resurrect that again with another 2 ES contracts of just barely micro scalping, 2 ticks, and trying to pick a bottom here within this first few minutes. Stupidity all around, of just, I should have been willing to let it go and say, okay, that was stupid. We missed that for some reason, but let's come back tomorrow. This type of play is not what I've put the data and the time and energy into pursuing. This is the same stupidity that had me the $1,000 loss day, that is just having me in a hole and me just digging the shovel even deeper, right? So I need to definitely get away from that. That is one big key takeaway for me on the day, is just quit this stupidity. It is with near impossible. I've really never even done it successfully, of trying to micro scalp, especially within the first 15 to 30 minutes of market open, of trying to pick a direction correctly or appropriately size my risk reward. Is just atrocious, and it needs to be eliminated from my entire psychosis is the word that comes to mind. I'm not sure even that's even a word, but yeah, that is going to be one big key takeaway for me. And then another one as I get into the other tickers on the day, is I do need to be sizing in more to these small cap plays, or to these plays that I am confident in and that I'm getting the appropriate position, size, and entry upon. So MULN is a great opportunity. 6.7, I think, percent I took off of that one, off of 100 shares. But I think, yeah, another leg for me is going to be, I'm going to kind of refill that futures account to maintain this discipline on the automated strategy that I have been putting in the work, and that it has consistent, repeatable, back-tested results as compared to what I was trying to do with that stupidity there. And then, yeah, filling back up this cash account again with more cash to throw in each day at these plays, because for me, it's not doing that is a failure in terms of execution for me. For how many times I've been getting the reps in, for how many times I've been nailing them pretty nicely, not making home runs out of them, but taking decent profits away when I do get that nice entry point and play on them. I think that's definitely needs to be taken going forward. So that is kind of the introduction and that ES trade. I'll get into MULN now. Nice little play on the day. This was multi-day play. It's an American EV company. Scans shows it has a 1.8 million float, but that dilution tracker actually shows it at like 180 million because of the cashless warrants that it does have out there. Then it also noted underneath that it could already be potentially depleted based on the volume that it's been producing these past few trading days, few trading weeks here. So just keeping that in mind. I was still viewing it as a low floater for the time being, and also watching. I'll get into AGRI after this one. That was going to be more my favorite based on the scanning from yesterday before we had pre-market today, where it did get a little bit more spiky, but that's for a little bit later. But yeah, respecting, gosh, I don't want to be, I want to be playing a breakout. We obviously have this $2 level, key psychological level, another perk here around 214, which is in another peak of just under that 196 for actual market hours on this initial run on that first screen day, if we want to call it that. So now we're kind of testing these levels again. I'm respecting, saying don't be chasing, don't be trying to do anything crazy, but gosh, for how it was holding in pre-testing to new highs here, still holding and clinging around VWAP. 180 became a key area to watch for me within the first few close minutes to market open. That, hey, I think I want to throw 10 shares, 20 shares at it. So I started in with 10 and 20 shares as it was holding that 1.8 level. As it dipped under and immediately kind of bought back up to that and started holding there again, saying, hey, I think this could offer some opportunity there. And holding those few little lingering shares, and then within that first minute candle was keeping my eye on the SPY, and then that stupidity going on there that I mentioned earlier on. But sure enough, it did hold off of that, put in a little dip, call it off of VWAP, but no real hard selling within that first minute candle. Then it starts to press that little previous high of 185. The thought was clicking in my head, I do definitely need to be sizing in with this more. Let's throw 100 shares at it just to even start. At that point, it's another level of, I know I need to be sizing in, but I'm not really have the luxury of that much time to be doing the calculations of what the appropriate position size would be, or like, oh, do I want to have 500 shares or do I want to have 1,000 shares? Trying to do the math of, okay, what's 185 times 300? Or so I said, hey, just throw 100 at it quick. Sure enough, we got a nice move immediately from there with big volume riding on that time sales to get this thing to 195, pulls back a little bit to right around there, and bounces again hard to above $2, which was awesome to see. Selling into that strength there with big volume. At another half of my position, I think I was out by then. I think I had 50 shares remaining with this last little exit that was based solely upon keeping a very tight stop, because for this style of trade with not that awesome of a position of power to be sitting from for my entry average, I knew I definitely had to force more out of it than could potentially be there, but keeping that tight risk along to coincide with that possibility. So not allowing this thing to trend all the way back down to 185 and just kind of screw me over. Definitely, that's obviously the end of that sentiment for the morning session within this candle. That was far later from my exit, but getting a little preemptive with that and starting in as I thought it was producing some weakness and saying that, yeah, this trend could be potentially over. Obviously, we're putting in lower highs here with this 946 candle and break off of that kind of whole roundish level of 195 was not the greatest sign for this little move here off of the dip bounce off of highs, and 3 hard red candles following that big green move there as well. Wasn't the greatest sign on that for the morning session, but did hold up decently into the afternoon, came back above VWAP, but now closing under VWAP. And like number 7 said in the chat, we'll see if this one ends up holding for a later week potential move to get a further breakout above 214, 215-ish here for a later move there. But very interesting play and awesome little opportunity to be a part of, even though it was in perspective, small size, that I was having the thought of, hey, this is the area that it is that I should be sizing up on. These are correct identifying metrics that I am looking at here. And still, even with the wanting to have little feelers or having the 10 share, 20 share position, I certainly can't knock myself for that. An awesome little entries and exits along the way for that one today. I'll get into our AGRI as well. Oh, I wanted this one so bad as a third day play. I'm wishing that I could have been in this one over the weekend and holding just even a few shares. And I think that's definitely going to have to be the play going forward, of not throwing a huge position size or a full position size at these ones, these second day plays that from an overnight to a third day play. Because if they start to go and ramp like this in pre, of course I'm asleep, at that point it's just so hard to try and chase or pick your entry and still be comfortable saying, do I really think it has the potential? This one showed it definitely did have the potential today with 3 legs to reverse upon that I identified there. But yeah, that pre-mark today, I'm just saying, it's kind of just a little bit too quick, too soon for me to say that it's accumulating and offering a decent spot to come on the chart, the trade on my terms. Great podcast with Be the Traders today, if I forget the guy's name, but of how he was describing it, of that he's throwing out huge amounts of bids and asks on his terms on a trade. So whether or not he gets filled on the day is really kind of the market's decision. But if he does get filled, it is entirely on his terms as he wants it to be, versus how when I like to get chasey at times, then it just from the get-go becomes a very on the whim of what the chart says type of trade versus how I want to trade it and versus what the chart is actually saying about the trade, as compared to me just kind of being blown with the wind of, oh, sometimes it's awesome that I get blown really high and I'm long versus, and vice versa, versus, sitting from a position of power, having shares in this thing from overnight or being able to be in it from a greater, far less entry average and being able to ride along with the wave and the shakeouts to profit on the upside. So that was AGRI. Just as reference for me again today, Canadian Agricultural 10 Company, 12-ish million flow. They got a few little warrants out there. And yeah, just a little bit too preemptive in pre-market for me to feel confident in it. Nothing really spanking my goots here in the scanner for the after hours that I'll be looking at hard for tomorrow, but obviously going to keep grinding away and looking at it a little bit later here in the after hours. But that is really all I had today. Thankful to be alive, thankful to get after it, thankful for every opportunity that is presented, for every loss and every gain. And we are getting after it, that is for sure. I sincerely thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.